Just a day after the U.S. finally gave permission for Ukraine to fire American long-range missiles into Russian territory, Kiev has done so. The attack on a target within Russia's recognized territorial borders has been confirmed by both Moscow and Washington. This shift in U.S. policy comes at a critical moment, with the Biden administration set to make way for Donald Trump's in January. Moscow reports that the strike hit the Bryansk region, and Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, has warned of consequences. Today marks 1,000 days since Russia invaded Ukraine, and this latest development is being closely monitored by world leaders at the G20 summit in Brazil. More on that in a moment, but first, our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, reports from Moscow. Steve Rosenberg's report. Breaking news on Russian TV claims that Ukraine has fired 6 American-made attack missiles into Russia's Bryansk region. Thankfully, there are no reports of casualties. In response, Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, has said that the missile attack is a clear signal that the West is intent on escalating the conflict. But is Russia truly escalating the situation? Today, the Kremlin published a decree that lowers the nuclear threshold, indicating that Russia now reserves the right to use nuclear weapons if its sovereignty or territorial integrity is threatened, even by conventional weapons. This follows President Putin's earlier promise to revise Russia's nuclear doctrine, sending a message to Europe and the US to prevent Ukraine from striking Russian territory with long-range missiles. Further, Russian nuclear exercises have served as a warning to the West about crossing Russia's so-called red lines. The big question remains: would President Putin actually use nuclear weapons? The situation is grave, and experts suggest that even Putin is uncertain, with decisions often driven by emotion. This week, the lowering of the nuclear threshold does not mean an imminent nuclear attack. It's designed to pressure Western leaders, forcing them to decide if Putin is bluffing. At the Museum of Victory earlier today, the Kremlin launched commemorations for the upcoming 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Interestingly, no mention was made of the 1,000 days of Russia's war in Ukraine, a war that the Kremlin insists must end in victory. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow. Nick Early's update from Ukraine. Moving to the battlefield. BBC's Nick Early joins us to update us on the situation in Ukraine. Nick, after 1,000 days of war, Russia's territorial gains are becoming increasingly significant. Based on analysis by the Institute for the Study of War, Russia's advances this year have been more substantial than in 2023. In February, Russia had made some progress, but by September, the situation changed dramatically. Russia has seized nearly 2,000 square kilometers of territory, almost 6 times the amount it captured in the entirety of 2023. In the town of Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine, a key location Russia is targeting, the devastation is clear. This heavy bombardment is part of the ongoing Russian offensive. However, it comes at a heavy cost, with tens of thousands of Russian soldiers killed, a toll Moscow seems prepared to pay. With President Trump's potential return to the White House, some analysts speculate that Russia's recent territorial gains could strengthen its hand in future peace talks. Nick Early, BBC Verify. Vicky Young reports from Rio de Janeiro. As the G20 summit in Brazil continues, President Zelensky of Ukraine has expressed his frustration with the lack of response from world leaders to Russia's nuclear threats. The G20 has been divided on the issue, with many leaders not taking a strong stance against Russia. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has raised the issue of Ukraine at every opportunity, urging other world leaders to support Ukraine for as long as it takes to win the war. Despite Russia's nuclear rhetoric, Sunak emphasized that it would not deter Western support for Ukraine. The rhetoric from Moscow is escalating, but Ukraine remains defiant, holding Russia accountable for its aggression. Vicky Young, BBC News, Rio de Janeiro. Analysis. As we've seen from Nick and Steve, the war's dynamics continue to evolve, with significant territory changing hands in Ukraine and growing concerns about Russia's nuclear posture. But the key question now is what happens when Donald Trump takes office? Will he reverse the missile decision, and will he push for peace talks? The uncertainty is palpable, and with both Putin and Trump being unpredictable figures, The world stands on edge. Stay tuned to Celebrity Roots Gossip for the latest updates on this developing story.